We are back. Hello and welcome to Network. My name is Pumela Lezondi with your technology and social media news. Remember to continue using that hand sanitizer. Wash your hands as frequently as possible and wear that face mask in crowded spaces. COVID-19 is still with us. It is SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. News Network at sabc.co.za on email. This week, our Twitter poll is asking us about those power cuts that we keep on experiencing, and we're asking what technologies you want to make sure are definitely charged for when you have no power. Results of that are coming up later in the program. Firstly, here's what's coming up today. We have details on the growth of the gaming industry, especially as Netflix and Mark Zuckerberg's Meta are getting in on the action. We find out what Real Goboza presenter Samora Mangesi really loves using technology-wise. And in our discussion, we find out whether South Africa can really have those smart cities and smart cars that the president keeps on talking about, especially as we have been experiencing repeated power cuts, sometimes in some cities for 6 hours in a day. Gaming is an industry that's growing at a faster rate, and it will be worth over $200 billion. You can multiply by 15 depending on the time of the month to get the rand value of that. Now, Netflix and Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg's Meta are also getting in on the action. At the height of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, Netflix saw its subscription jump to new heights. People were sitting at home with nothing much else to do, so many started streaming shows online. Netflix also launched many African shows and movies. Some thought there could not be much further growth for the platform. But Netflix has now ventured into gaming.
Netflix had started and tried to implement or started implementing. We had these interactive movies which you would be able to then pause a particular scene because of how you would have chosen where the movie would go, because you would have buttons that you can interact with, and those buttons would basically give you different branches where you can have different outcomes or different endings.
The Global Games Market report released by Newzoo estimates that gaming will generate revenue of over $200 billion by 2023. There are other studies that support this.
With more time being spent on the platforms, it simply means more money will be able to actually be as revenues for these companies, and that is definitely where we are seeing a lot of things happening, where we are seeing a lot of opportunities for various sectors to even be able to go on board, because with the way Netflix also has not been wanting to deal with or to include advertising directly with any or other traditional media. Now we are seeing that the opportunity there becomes different, because then you can easily have any brand's game that can actually be clearly put there, and it's easy to place also other brands in the game environment.
Our company is now Meta.
When Facebook billionaire founder Mark Zuckerberg announced his new company Meta recently, he mentioned that gaming will be a huge part of the metaverse. Augmented and virtual reality are a huge promise too.
And you're going to be able to do almost anything you can imagine. Get together with friends and family, work, learn, play, shop, create, as well as entirely new categories that don't really fit how we think about computers or phones today.
While infrastructure like expensive internet access, regular power cuts, and high cost of consoles, there is growth in the gaming world in South Africa too. It can be seen in the increasing number of esports competitions.
Africa is never late to anything. Africa just needs to always wake up when it's ready. And I think that time is now. Asians, Europeans have heard about esports because that is where the product started from. And the gaming culture is big in Africa, but not the esports culture. So all we need to do is introduce esports into that culture.
Strapi Mabuza from the township of Alexandra outside Johannesburg is a 2-times Red Bull Hit the Streets competition winner.
How I started as a kid. Like I was 6 and my dad came and he just took me to the local arcade scene, you know. But then he didn't take me to play Street Fighter. He took me to play Snow Bros. Street Fighter was next to it, so like the following day I went there by myself and I found Street Fighter there, and I always wanted to try the game, you know, but I was too afraid of people beating me, you know. So I'd always used to go there when there's nobody there and start practicing by myself. And then once I got good enough and got confident, now I started like having this hunger of playing people, you know. So I started challenging anybody, even if I'd lose, but I'd still challenge people.
Then there's the dark side of it all. In South Africa, racism is sometimes reported in online gaming. This as players would be largely hiding behind anonymous profiles.
Those kind of things happen, you know, especially in online gaming. Unfortunately for the player, that he was a pro player, so it was a lot easier for him to get picked. That, oh no, it's this guy, you know. These kind of things, they happen. You know, they happen, but I think there's because for gaming, there's different communities. Like for the Street Fighter community, not so much.
In China, they're worried about addiction. The government there will now limit children's gaming time to just 2 hours as well, which will be only on the weekend. All right, let's go to West Africa now. It's Ivory Coast, to be exact, where agricultural byproduct is being turned into compost, and this is with the use of award-winning technology.
This is the Cubeco Box, an award-winning bio-waste converter that is helping farmers in Ivory Coast turn mountains of agricultural byproducts into compost.
Donc voici comment on fabrique un Cubeco composteur. Donc le Cubeco composteur, c'est vraiment un outil agricole, hein. Ça aide les producteurs à transformer leurs propres déchets organiques en engrais, en compost solide et puis en engrais liquide.
Farmers like palm oil producer Michel Ahouri simply have to throw in organic matter and wait.
Nous allons facilement atteindre les 40 tonnes à l'hectare par année. Voilà, parce qu'avec cet engrais qui est naturel, c'est du bio, donc c'est naturel, c'est approprié à notre sol, à notre terrain. Donc nous allons doubler, tripler même la production.
Farmers only need to gather the droppings of cows or other animals, sawdust and cocoa pods, mix everything together in the Cubeco box, wait for a month, and the result is organic compost and liquid fertilizer.
On a mis la bouse de vache qui est le déchet humide. Encore on met la cellule de bois qui est le déchet sec, et puis ainsi de suite. On a mis les cabosses de cacao. Après les cabosses de cacao, on revient comme c'est une alternative en fait. On met déchets secs, humides, sec, humide. Sec là contient du carbone. Humide là, lui, contient de l'azote. Voilà, donc ensemble, ça forme un bon mélange.
Lono sends its technicians to help farmers learn how to use the machines more efficiently.
L'ambition de Lono, c'est vraiment de rendre la valorisation des déchets organiques accessible à tout le monde. Pas seulement en Côte d'Ivoire ni en Afrique, vraiment accessible à tout le monde parce que c'est une matière première à laquelle tout le monde a accès. Du point de vue ivoirien, puisque dans l'apprentissage entrepreneurial, on a compris qu'il faut marcher avant de courir. Donc on a décidé de vraiment se concentrer sur le marché ivoirien d'abord et puis progressivement s'étendre.
Lono has installed 50 composters at Ivorian cocoa, palm oil and mango farms, working to lower production costs.
Now, Real Goboza, or RGB, has been giving people entertainment gossip for about a decade and a half. It's coming to an end now, so we thought we should check in with a presenter, Samora Mangesi, who's telling us about his favorite technology and how he uses tech in general.
My name is Samora Mangesi. I am a television and radio host, 28 years old. Originally born in East London, in Tanzania, and then I moved to Cape Town to pursue my studies and ended up falling into television there. My favorite piece of technology right now, so I am someone who is actually very interested in cars and vehicles. And I think that the technology that we're seeing being packed into our vehicles nowadays not just looking at the safety features that we see, but also just from an entertainment perspective. And I think what also just excites me in the vehicle space in terms of technology as well definitely has to be where we're moving in terms of electronic vehicles and what we're seeing in that space. One of the most interesting things to see for me over the years that I've been in the media space has definitely been how every single person who has a device, a cell phone, can now actually be a broadcaster. Being able to have an entire studio, an entire crew just in your pocket. I think ultimately the most interesting thing that I have come across is definitely the innovation that South Africans are trying to do. More specifically around the e-hailing space. But it's very interesting to see that South Africans are trying to build their own platforms and are actually trying to break into a space which is so dominated by platforms that come from the outside. It's great that we're seeing development. I mean, looking at things like animation, where when we can't work together and be in the same space, to still be able to create a message and put it out. Especially when it comes to things like PSAs, looking at the pandemic, looking at the coronavirus, and how we can communicate the message about social distancing, washing hands, and all of that. It's definitely something that was needed and has developed due to that need.
It is a SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. After the break, we chat about whether South Africa can dream about those smart cities and smart cars, especially with these prolonged power cuts that we're experiencing at the moment. It is a SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. News Network at sabc.co.za on email. Now, technology companies say they are struggling with these prolonged power cuts, especially as they come after a few processes of hard lockdowns that South Africa has had. Sanele Mhlongo says running a mobile app that requires clients to use mobile devices to call service providers to their homes has been tough in times of power cuts. He says phone batteries can die and that the network to communicate can be very slow in times of load shedding.
A client gets to book a service and then the service provider gets a notification, and then you find that a client's load shedding could be a network problem, or the customer as well, phone switches off because there's no electricity power, and then now the service provider is directly at the doorstep trying to reach to a customer, and then that becomes a problem.
This happens as he and the service providers on his platform recover from hard lockdowns that prevented them from doing any business at all. The tech entrepreneur says he's found ways that allow the LO app he's founded to not only completely depend on unreliable network, especially with so many power cuts in South Africa.
We noticed the problem before we even started this tech business, that we're really going to encounter certain things like load shedding. So that's why we were able to shift our servers and make them cloud. In that way, when there's a load shedding and there's no electricity power, our company keeps operating. But with that being said, sometimes the load shedding does affect the towers, making the internet and the network a little bit slower, but it's basically a problem that we can't really solve, but just have to adjust to it.
While some entrepreneurs are going off the grid to operate more efficiently, Eskom says they have plans to eventually use more alternatives to coal, so they too can offer a service that doesn't leave tech startups and other businesses as frustrated as they often are. But they say it will be costly and will require making a few loans.
Funders, financiers out there, we South Africa can offer you the biggest point source of emission reduction in the world, carbon emission reduction. Can you give us $7 to $8 per ton and fund it in that way?
South Africa's scheduled power cuts have lasted more than a decade. There's no end in sight. So tech startups like Mhlongo's LO app are likely going to endure them for a while longer. And while we are here, we wonder if we can even dream of smart cars and smart cities as envisioned by President Cyril Ramaphosa. To further this discussion now on whether South Africa can have these massive smart city dreams and electric car dreams that President Cyril Ramaphosa has mentioned from time to time, I'm now joined by Adewale Adejumo. He is the co-founder of dropstore.co.za. Hello, thank you very much for being a part of our network, Adewale. Maybe if you can start by telling us whether South Africa can dream about these smart cities.
I think it is possible for South Africa to move into the direction of smart cities. But one thing is that there first has to be a vision for there to be a smart city, for a smart city to actually, for a plan and a strategy for that to be in place, for us to actually realize the vision of a smart city. So yes, South Africa can. But where we are currently with regards to the amount of power that we are producing as a country, smart city is currently not a reality.
And what would it take to have us see them become a reality?
I saw a tweet where I think it was a headline where I think Eskom was trying to differentiate between what a blackout is and what a load shedding is. So blackouts in some countries have been due to their power lines not being being too old and not being maintained. It's not due to the fact that they don't have enough power. In South Africa, load shedding, it's due to the fact that there's not enough power. It's not a matter of like whether we need to upgrade the power lines, maybe, because they're 200 or 300 years old or something like that. It's because there's not enough power. So for us, that is why having smart cities and even having everyone go electric is not a reality, because there's not enough power currently to power our houses, our industries, our factories. Now, imagine introducing electric vehicles into the old ecosystem. We will not be able to handle charging electric vehicles.
You talk about electric cars as well, Adewale. What would one need to have an electric car running efficiently from, let's say, Limpopo to KwaZulu-Natal on the highway?
We will need to have charging stations, okay, for electric vehicles to actually be a reality. But one thing though is that there are ways to bypass charging electric vehicles, from the main power grid. For example, Toyota and other car manufacturers could actually have charging stations that are not on the grid, by using renewable energy with things such as solar energy to actually charge their power stations. So that's one possible solution. But the main thing is that there has to be charging stations at least every, say, 100 kilometers or so.
Adewale, what alternatives are there that can improve our lives to what we already have?
A smart home would need to have technology that's able to regulate whether you pull in electricity either from the main electrical grid or whether you are pulling electricity from your own off-grid setup that you have. So a smart home would need to ensure that you have enough power stored, and also be able to choose between which one is actually most efficient for you in terms of powering up your home, because you might find that storing electricity might be a lot cheaper than actually getting electricity directly from the main electrical grid. So you can still run a smart home on off the Eskom power grid. However, when there's no power, there's no smart home running.
Adewale Adejumo, thank you very much for being a part of our network. Adewale Adejumo there is the co-founder of dropstore.co.za. With that, let's take a quick break. It is a SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Welcome back. Let's check in on what's happened in the tech space in the rest of the world.
Europe draft rules requiring tech firms to do more to tackle illegal online content, could become a global gold standard for a safer online world if they are beefed up. Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen told EU lawmakers.
My name is Frances Haugen. I used to work at Facebook and joined the company because I believe Facebook has the potential to bring out the best in us. But I am here today because I believe that Facebook's products harm children, stoke division, weaken our democracy, and much more.
Haugen, a former Facebook employee who worked as a product manager on the company's civic misinformation team, has accused the social media giant of repeatedly prioritizing profit over clamping down on hate speech and misinformation.
The Facebook platform today damages the health and safety of our communities and threatens the integrity of our democracies. Rising to meet these challenges won't be easy, but democracies must do what they have always done when the actions of commerce conflict with the interests of the people and society as a whole.
Her testimony to a European Parliament committee comes after stops in London and Berlin, and at a time when EU lawmakers are debating whether to firm up the Digital Services Act.
I am grateful that the European Union is taking this very seriously. The Digital Services Act that is now before this Parliament has the potential to be a global gold standard. It can inspire other countries, including my own, to pursue new rules that would safeguard our democracies.
Haugen said the DSA should be expanded to include online content that violates a platform's terms and conditions. In a blog post ahead of the EU hearing, Facebook rejected Haugen's claims that it prioritizes profits over user safety. Facebook said it would spend more than $5 billion this year on safety and security. Japan's Subaru unveiled its first all-electric vehicle, the Solterra, the result of a 2-year joint development project with its biggest shareholder, Toyota Motors. The sports utility launch comes amid accelerating demand for EVs as nations around the world tighten environmental regulations to cut carbon emissions. The front-wheel drive has a cruising range of 530 kilometers per hour, while the all-wheel drive version can drive 460 kilometers on a single charge. Toyota owns a fifth of Subaru and has a 5% stake in Mazda Motors, which plans to launch 13 electrified vehicles by 2025.
South Africa has been experiencing prolonged power cuts. And so our Twitter poll this week is asking you, what technologies do you ensure are charged the most in cases where power cuts are scheduled? At 16.4% are people who say they ensure that the laptop is charged. At 74.6% are those of you who say you make sure you charge the mobile phone. That's the overwhelming majority. In last place is 3.3%. Those are people who charge the portable phone charger. You think a lot of people would charge those, so they power up the mobile phone later. And there's also 5.6% who say they only charge the torch or torch batteries. All right, and that's it. That's all we have for you. Find us on SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's News Network at sabc.co.za on email. From me, it's Phumelele Zondi and the rest of the team. Have a good one. Bye-bye.